From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes, brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. And Wally, off the top, we're going to dig deep into a book called Purple Pain, which has a lot of chapters
I was gonna say.
of down moments in the history of the Minnesota Vikings.
Chapter and verse.
Yeah, this is a thick book.
Yeah.
It's a war and peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and imagine this. You know, originally being from Cleveland, I've got a book that's about just as thick. Probably the two most snake-bit franchises in NFL history are the Vikings and the Browns. I don't think there's much question.
Buffalo would argue.
Buffalo would be
that would
in
be the
mix.
trifecta.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to go right to the top of my list, and there's can't be too much argument on this one. The Vikings were the best team in the regular season in 1998. Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Randall Cunningham and Robert Smith and basically blowing everybody out all year long, right? And they get into the NFC Championship game, and Gary Anderson has a chance to seal the deal against the Falcons, and Gary Anderson misses a field goal, and the Falcons go on to win that thing in overtime. It was devastating. I mean, everybody at that Metrodome thought, hey, we're going to the Super Bowl finally, and it did not happen. That's already been, 25 years ago now.
Well, and he had not missed an extra point or a field goal until that moment in time. And the Metrodome turned into literally
the Metro-Tomb. It was the Metro-Tomb.
When that game was over and Atlanta won in overtime. Yeah, that's a dagger defeat, no doubt about it. I'm going to go back even further in time. Now, some of our younger viewers don't remember the Super Bowl losses. But let me tell you, I was around for them as a young kid. There's nothing. If you're a passionate fan, which I was then, I'm not anymore. I've detached. But there's nothing more devastating than your team losing a Super Bowl. And then let's magnify that and watch your team lose 4 in a 7-year span. Yeah. The Purple People Eaters, Alan Page, Carl Eller. You got Matt Blair, you got Paul Krause, you got Fran Tarkenton, you got Chuck Foreman, Ahmad Rashad, Ron Erie, Bud Grant. I mean, this was a fantastic group of athletes. But when they got on the super stage, it was a colossal failure. They could not get it done. And it's still tough for Viking fans who saw that to grasp they couldn't get one win in 4 tries.
Yeah. Over. Well, the second one on my list was more recent, the 2009, the Brett Favre year, where Favre came in, of course, the helicopters and everything, bringing him in, and he comes in to save the day and leads the Vikings to the NFC Championship down in New Orleans. I was there. Well, I was at the Gary Anderson one, too, for that matter. And he throws the ball across his body on a drive that would have set up the game-winning field goal, and he gets picked off. A guy by the name of Porter, right? Isn't that the guy who picked him
Tracy
off?
Porter.
Tracy Porter picked him off. Of course, that was the game where Favre was. They targeted him. Bountygate. But he threw across his body, interception. New Orleans wins and goes to the Super Bowl and gets their only Super Bowl win.
Brett Favre giveth, Brett Favre taketh.
Yes.
Right? That was kind of his MO. Yeah, another one that if Viking fans who saw that one still can't believe it. It went the way it went. I'll go back to 1975, the Hail Mary game against Dallas, because I've been able to talk to a lot of Vikings who were on that team since then. And to a man, they've told me that was our best squad, top to bottom. We were poised to make a Super Bowl run and win it. And so you got Dallas at the old Met. It's, the skating rink that it was back in the day, and you should win that game. Dallas was a wild card then. And you're up by 4 points, and Dallas converts on a 4th and 27 on an out route to Drew Pearson. And then a few seconds later, the Hail Mary from Roger Staubach to Drew Pearson with the shove on Nate Wright. And out came the whiskey bottle, and down go the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah. I'm going to go to another one. I've been at all of these, so this makes this even more difficult. Actually, easier to remember, but harder to forget. Blair Walsh missing against Seattle. They had the game won. It was a chip shot field goal. It was freezing. It was one of the coldest games in NFL history. Third coldest game in NFL history. Blair Walsh was a stud his first year and struggled a little bit in his second year. But man, when he hooked that field goal that would have won it, it was a big letdown. The Vikings should have, could have, and ought to have gone on in the playoffs that year, but they did not.
Yeah, I remember that one too. I was in the stands, and it was frigid. There's no doubt about it. Nobody sat down the entire game. You had over 50K at then TCF Bank Stadium. That fan base deserved to see that team win that day against a good Seattle Seahawks squad. And for them to lose that way, and for people to have to suffer in the cold. It's one thing if you get the win, it's all worth it. But then they had to go home and treat frostbite.
Yeah. Do you have any more? You got one more? I got one more.
I'll go with the debacle in the desert. This would be the early 2000s. The Minnesota Vikings had led the NFC North every second of the season until the final play of the regular season against Arizona when Josh McCown hit Nathan Poole in the back of the end zone for a touchdown, knocked the Vikings into second place, and, of course, Green Bay won the division. And the next week at Lambeau for a playoff game, they brought Nathan Poole in and gave him the key to the city.
That's pretty good stuff. All right. Finally, the last one. Let's go current. Your Minnesota Vikings go 13-4. They have one of the best records in the National Football League, and they bow out in the first round to the New York Football Giants, who got clobbered the following week by Philadelphia. But it's a team that they had just beaten a few weeks earlier in the regular season, and they get beat by the Giants. And Lord, what in the world? I mean, and I've been at all four of those games. It's just one disappointment after another.
Yeah.
Purple Pain.
I was going to say, if Prince were still around, we'd have him sing Purple Pain, because that's what it's been for the Minnesota Vikings. All right, well, stick around. We'll talk a different kind of football. Soccer, we'll go onto the pitch. Tony Sennah will join us, Minnesota soccer icon. You're on 10K Takes, your Purple Pain ticket.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10,000 takes, and we're going to talk some soccer now with a Minnesota soccer legend, Tony Sennah, who, of course, played on 5 different MLS teams. Let's bring Tony in right now. Tony, let's talk about Minnesota's MLS team right now, kind of on the skids. Had some struggles over the last couple of weeks. As you look at how they are put together this year, are they that much different than last year and the year before? What do you see as some of the issues that they're dealing with?
Well, I think, early years they were a surprise team. Then they were a competitive team and no longer, a new team. And, this year I think it's tough because people don't take them for granted. It's early in the season. Their best player has been AWOL. The good news is their defense overall is playing well. They're not allowing most goals in games. They're not scoring, but, you take your best offensive player away, it's going to take a while, even for people to step up. Even if you have new players, they're used to playing with one guy, and he's the playmaker, and he's gone. And fortunately, he's back in Minnesota this week, so hopefully they can get him back up to speed and keep the ball rolling. The good news is the defense have been pretty good, and it's really hard to play defense when you can't score goals. And but even then, they've been keeping the other teams out of the box score.
So that's Emmanuel Reynoso is coming back. I know Minnesota United is happy about that. Tell us about the goalkeeper, though, Dane St. Clair, who played on the Canadian World Cup team and was an all-star last season. As you mentioned, the defense and the goalkeeping has pretty much kept them in these games, hasn't it?
Yeah, and that just shows, in the back, Boxall is a leader, and Dane obviously, is up and coming. And, I could see it, it's going to be hard to keep a young player like that that's showing a lot of potential here for the next couple of years. I'm sure that people come in and look to buy him. But yeah, they've had good leadership in those two areas, and they've kept them close and kept them in games. And it's you're going to get players and you can buy some goals, but knowing that you're at least playing honest every game, when you get to the middle of the season, you're going to start winning some of these games you're not winning right now. So I'd rather be in this position than scoring a lot of goals and losing 4-3, etc.
For the sport of soccer in Minnesota, how important has it been that they have had some success on the field? I mean, obviously, we know that people are showing up to Allianz Field, but that's a different story if you're not winning soccer matches. And they have been. Through the last couple of years at Allianz, they've been pretty good. What are your thoughts about how it has helped trigger interest in the game?
Well, I think that they've done just such a good job with a good experience that, I don't think that they have to win, but they have to be competitive. It helps when, you have some personalities that people actually want to follow. I mean, we have some great Minnesota organizations that win in the regular season, but not the big one. But, they have
really,
right. But we have superstars, and on any given day they give you enough hope, and that makes it awesome. But if you look at the new Viking Stadium or you look at the Twin Stadium, they're just good places that you want to be, right? And the United States, I think, is better than both of them. It's family friendly, right? You have great sight lines. You can just have a good time. So it's bringing people into the soccer environment that say, I want to go and enjoy a great day and, build traditions like baseball was built in this country. Go with your family, have a good day, watch a competitive team, have a beer at the brew hall, walk around, good sights, get up to the good side of the river. I'm from St. Paul, by the way.
Oh boy.
and do that. So they've done a great job just building the stadium and the team, and Major League Soccer has done a good job too. And, the Loons have been competitive, and we've had a home field advantage because of the spirit of the crowd and the supporters club. So I think they keep going, and there's more teams in the league. It's getting harder to win. Right now we're sort of like in the lower of the middle pack. We're not on the bottom. We're just not in the top group anymore. And even last year, we kind of started slow, then we got hot, and then we kind of teetered off. So I like where we are. It takes one great player to turn a team around, and we just might have that person.
And there's no doubt Allianz Field it's a soccer cathedral. And Tony, you've had a ton of success on the pitch as a player. You played in the World Cup back in 2002, but what you've done since then with giving back to the community and the Sennah Foundation and all your camps you run that are free to kids, multi-sports too, not just soccer. But you were recognized at the State of the Union address that President Joe Biden gave back in February in D.C. You were invited to that because of your off-the-pitch charities. Talk about that. Congratulations.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I grew up in the Twin Cities, and there was always people that helped me along the way. People were always looking out for me from my coaches. And, one of my grade school coaches, Mr. Roble, still donates to the foundation, after not seeing him in 20 or 30 years. So it was just a good place to grow up. And I was really supported by the community. So I came back, and the only reason I was able to, bring my vision to light was that people in the community supported it. And so it's a great place to help others. And we have a lot more challenges now that are not unique to the Twin Cities, but nationally, with COVID and race relations and violence and crime. So we're trying to do our part. And it's been good to get noticed, and, we want to do more of a good thing. And so we're full steam ahead. And I always tell people, if someone stops and asks you for directions, give me one good reason why you wouldn't give it to them, right? And so that's helping somebody. So if we have the resources or the knowledge that we can help young people or anybody, why wouldn't we do it? And so that's what I'm trying to live out. And my mom was a social worker and taught me that at a young age.
You mentioned, that you grew up in the Twin Cities. Talk about soccer back then as compared to soccer right now, particularly at the youth and up to the high school level, how much it has changed. I mean, from the outsider looking in, it's been drastic. Tell me about it as a former player, how that looks to you.
Well, first of all, I don't think this is unique to soccer. I mean, look at basketball in Minnesota compared to where it was 20 years ago in our AAU landscape, right?
Right.
And look at youth sports in general. But soccer was sort of not the popular sport, and coaches were volunteers. And luckily, I had one of the best coaches in the history of Minnesota, still to this day, as a volunteer coach and my high school math teacher at St. Paul Academy. His name was Buzz Lagos. But we were a scrappy team, and he put us together, and we kind of policed each other, and there was like 4 or 5 neighboring teams in the community that you went and played against. And it's amazing now that I see the guys from White Bear Lake or Rochester or Apple Valley, our big rivals, and we're all grown up, and we realize that what being involved in the sport did for us. Now you look at it, and it's a large cult. Kids are spending a lot of money. Nobody wants to be left behind. In some cases, people are driving 6 hours to Iowa to play 3 games against teams from Minnesota. And I'm like, it's silly in that factor. But it's definitely something that kids are passionate about. I think, the internet and YouTube, like, it's easy to see what Messi looks like, right? So our players are better because what we can see on TV, but also we have a professional team here. So we know, what a high level game looks like in person. So it's been fun to see the game grow, in my own backyard, and be able to, go to a game as a fan and a spectator. As far as the youth cult, I try to ingrain in people that, people need to love the game. They need to do it because they want to. And you need to give them the tools to go out and get better on their own. You teach a kid how to read, and he goes and learns about history and science on his own. You can't teach everything in a classroom. And so I do get disheartened a little bit about the price it costs to pay and how serious it's gotten for parents more than kids, and what kind of pressure that puts on youth in today's community.
Tony, one final thought. You've played for Team USA in the World Cup. How far away is this country from making a run for a World Cup title? I mean, it seems very elusive because there hasn't been a lot of success, but are we close?
I think we're going to surprise people, and my goal would be to get to the semifinals next World Cup when we host here. If you think about it, we were the last couple of World Cups. I mean, we're 2 wins away from there, right? So anything can happen. We have a young team, some talented players. I think, stability, matters. We have more players playing in Europe, but we also have a league that's getting better. And so it's not necessarily producing the Messis, but producing sort of, the lower end, the mid-range all-star, the guy that real professional, so that it's everybody, is on. It's not necessarily who's going to win, but don't put players on the field that are going to lose for you. So I do think that we can make a run this next World Cup. In our World Cup, we lost in the quarterfinals, but had we gotten that, and some people say we may have been cheated on a goal, we would have played a team we already tied, and we knew we were better than the semifinals, and who knows what could have happened. So it takes a little luck, a little streak, but in this day and age, there's good athletes in every country. So not only do you have to be good, you have to be lucky. But we have some special players now, and I think we're going to make a run if we can sort out our coaching situation.
Of course, I'm going to put an asterisk next to this. The women have had plenty of success. It's the men that we got to get on the board at the World Cup, right?
The women have been leaders, and for them it's just the opposite. I think the rest of the world is catching up, and they're trying to figure out ways on how they're going to innovate, because they're the target for every other nation in the country, and they have the swagger, and we need to learn from them, just sometimes how to win, right? And there's some people that it doesn't matter what really happens, but they used to have a saying is, soccer is a funny game that 22 men run around for 90 minutes and the Germans win 1-0, because eventually they just figured out how to win. It didn't really matter what happened, but they just knew how to win. And our women were winners, and they did it great. And even now they're winning. And I think on the men's side, it's those close games because there's not a lot of difference in players all over the world anymore.
No question. Well, Tony, appreciate you spending some time with us. Good luck with your foundation and all the great work you're doing in the Twin Cities, and we'll talk to you again down the road.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
right.
Tony.
He is Minnesota soccer legend Tony Sennah right here on 10,000 Takes. More to come after this timeout. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
All right. It has been a not so good year in Minnesota sports insofar as the ability to advance in the postseason. But there have been a handful of highlights. So I thought I'd throw out to you and give you an opportunity to wax positive. Obviously, we know that the Wild and the Wolves and the Vikings all bowed out in the first round. We know all that. But give me some good news, some things you look back over the last few months and you say, all right, this has been a good one.
Yeah, really not too many victories I can single out, but I'll talk about moments, snapshots in time.
All right.
Minnesota Wild playoff game. In fact, their last one against Dallas at the X. TJ Hawkinson, the Minnesota Vikings tight end, doing the let's play hockey, getting the X crowd revved up. He was doing his thing. He did his part. They didn't win, but it was kind of cool to see TJ, propping up the Wild, although they lost to Dallas. The other one would be Minnesota Timberwolves at Target Center when they had their final game of the year. Caitlin Clark and Jimmy Jam are in the house.
That's true.
They tried to get the Timberwolves all revved up and advance them into another game in the series.
Which they did.
Yeah, they did. They got them to Denver before they lost in Game 5. But Caitlin Clark, she's quickly become a rock star, and Jimmy Jam has been a rock star. He's in the Hall of Fame in Cleveland.
Literally.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Literally. All right. Here's mine. Your Minnesota Golden Gopher. I'm actually going to go actual on-ice activity. Your Golden Gopher men's hockey team. I know that they didn't win it all, and that drives you crazy, and it drives all the Golden Gopher hockey fans crazy. But look, Bob Motzko came in here to do one thing, and that was to get this program back on track. And I think that he has done that. You know, what has it been now, 5 years? This was his 5th year? Got them to the national championship game. They lost to Quinnipiac. I know they collapsed in the final minutes like most Minnesota teams do, but got to the national championship. The Mariucci Arena is a go-to place again. Big Ten hockey is finally rising from the ashes and becoming something that you want to see. The WCHA is gone. I know all the hockey people want to keep whining about it, and I'm one of them, but you know what? It's gone. Let's embrace what we've got. They were 29-10-1. They were 19-4-1 in the conference. Hats off to Bob Motzko coming from St. Cloud to the Twin Cities and uplifting this Golden Gopher men's hockey program.
We're number 2.
We are number 2. All right. We still have one segment to go. It is Takes of the Day coming up next here on 10,000 Takes.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10K Takes on television. We are just about ready to wrap up yet another episode. We'll have Takes of the Day here in a minute or two. But I know you want to get into Gopher football? You're already like chomping at the bit for the Gophers to hit the gridiron.
Well, they've got some attractive home games this year for a change. Last year, they had a garbage home schedule. No excuses this year for not putting people in seats, right? They open up at home against Nebraska, so you know there's going to be a lot of Cornhusker fans.
Cornhusker Nation invasion.
Okay, we don't get Iowa here this year, but we do get Bucky to end the season. In between, you get Eastern Michigan, the usual nonsense. Louisiana Lafayette, I believe it is.
You la.
But you do get Michigan here. You did get Michigan State here, and you get Illinois. And then, as I said, you wrap up with Wisconsin. So, between having Michigan, Nebraska, and Wisconsin here all in the same season, no excuses, PJ. You should be able to fill that stadium up.
I totally agree, and Illinois is a solid team now.
And Illinois is much
So
better.
You better pack the house then. And how about next year? I don't know what the schedule looks like, but you might have USC or UCLA coming to Minneapolis.
That's right. By the way, one of the road games for the Gophers this year, Ohio State. So they get both Ohio State and Michigan in the same season.
Yeah, there's no escaping that.
No.
All right, let's find out what your mood is. Are you a cranky Yankee, an angry American, a grumpy Guardian? What are you this week?
Well, as I've watched the NBA playoffs, I've noticed there's a lot of pushing and shoving and downright cheating during jump balls. And, there's a lot of blame to go around there. The referee throwing the ball up doesn't know how to throw it up, or the players are taking advantage because the referees aren't calling it. Well, they've got 3 refs on the floor. Let's get this straight. The referee should know how to throw up a jump ball, for goodness sake. NBA refs are well paid, okay? And then the other 2 refs, what are they doing? I mean, are they out to lunch? Are they going to the John? I mean, they should be watching for all the fouls and pushing and shoving that they tend to let go anyway during the game. What's different about this? No, this clearly should be a situation where the NBA actually uses the rules that are in place to regulate it. Now, that having been said, so I'm looking at social media, and all these folks on social media saying, get rid of the jump ball, go to alternating possessions. Yuck! I can't stand alternating possession. You get a jump ball situation in a game where clearly you would have the advantage, and oh, by the way, the arrow is pointing the other way. Jump ball was how the game was supposed to be played. It was eliminated first in girls basketball way back in the day when there were a ton of jump balls. I understood that. It made sense. But then it bled over into high school, and then it bled over into college. So now we have alternating possessions all through basketball. Don't do it in the NBA. Don't do it. Keep it where it's at. Just teach your officials, please, Adam Silver, how to throw a ball up and how to see. Use all 6 eyes that are out of the court, the fouls and the cheating that's going on during jump balls.
All right, well, let's see what the mood meter says. As I suspected, grumpy Guardian. He's going off the rails over jump balls. Wow. All right, well, I'm going to talk about college women's hoops.
Yes.
I mentioned Caitlin Clark earlier in the show. Now it's Angel Reese's turn. And by the way, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, it's a modern-day version of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson.
Wow.
They are propping up the sport. I mean, the college women's title game between LSU and Iowa garnered huge ratings, more eyeballs than the men's championship game. Well, Angel Reese now is posing for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. That would be the photo on the right. The one on the left is her playing for LSU. And she just has a knack, Wally, for getting into the spotlight and garnering attention. Shaquille O'Neal, who went to LSU, maybe the greatest LSU Tiger ever, or Joe Burrow or Justin Jefferson, whoever, Pete Maravich. Shaq says, no, it's Angel Reese. She's the greatest athlete ever to come out of Louisiana State University. And let me tell you, that photo's not going to hurt her cause. I'm sure she's going to get a lot of people say, yeah, she is good in a lot of ways. All right, and on that note, let's FedEx out those thank yous. One to Alex Yambrick, David Weld, Rocky, Tony Sennah. For Wally, I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.